Good day. You are welcome to the online scholar class, and I'm your tutor for biology. My name is Miss Fatima, and today we'll be treating relationships between living things and their environment, whereby we are focusing on their mode of feeding, their food. So the first one we'll be treating today is the food chain. Now, a food chain is a linear network of links starting from the producer organism, such as grass or algae, which produce their own food via photosynthesis. When I say via photosynthesis, I mean through photosynthesis, and ending at an apex predator species. Okay, now a food chain is also a chain that shows how organisms are related to each other by the food they eat and are important for survival of most species. Now, in a food chain, what we're basically looking at here is how they feed, how an organism feed in a particular habitat, starting from the producer. Now, if I say a producer, majorly the producers in an habitat are basically grass or algae. Now, an example of a food chain is this. We have the grass, to the rat, to the o or eagle. Now, in this food chain, this is the primary consumer and is also the primary producer. The grass gain its food through photosynthesis. We know grass are green plants now, they make use of photosynthesis for production of food. Okay, now this grass is eaten by the rat, and this rat is eaten by what? The eagle. So this is a food chain. This is a typical example of a food chain. It's just the way they feed. Now this feed on this, which is the primary producer, and this feed on this. So this one, the eagle, is the what? Is the secondary consumer, because it is feeding on the rest of the consumers. Now, another type of food connection in organisms in a particular habitat is the food web. Now, for the food web is a natural interconnection and a graphical representation of what eats what in an ecological community. Another name for a food web is consumer resource system. For a food web, we're looking at what is feeding on the other. Here now, we're looking at these three organisms. This is feeding this is feeding this. In the food web also, we're doing the same thing. But this one is interconnection. One is connecting to another. One can be connected to the two various organisms, and this one too connected to another organism. A can be connected to B connected to C. At the same time, C can also be connected to B. So I'll be giving out an example of a typical food web. Now, for a food web, we might have this. Okay, we have, for a food web, we have something like grass to goats, goats to lion, lion to rabbit. Now, this is a food web. They are interconnected. Both the rabbits and the goats, they are feeding on the grass. Now, the lion is the secondary consumer because it can consume both these two, which their major source of food is from the grass. So this lion here is the secondary consumer, and it's feeding on both the goat and the grass. So as I said earlier, that a food web is an interconnection. You can see this lion is connected to both organisms, and both organisms are also connected to what? To the grass, because this is their primary source of food. And this grass is getting its own food from where? From sunlight. So like I said earlier, that a food web is a natural interconnection and a graphical representation of what it was in an ecological community. So here now we know that, okay, this lion is what is eating these two goats, and these goats and the rabbit are both feeding on the grass. That's a typical example of a food web. Now, moving forward, we'll be looking at the energy pyramid. When they say something is energy pyramid, is a way of showing how energy flow through an ecosystem, specifically on certain food chain, both the predator and the prey. For the energy pyramid, we're looking at the flow of what? We're looking at the flow of energy through an ecosystem, specifically on a certain food chain. So for energy pyramid, we might be having something like the primary consumers, the secondary consumers. So we're looking at the flow of those energies in an ecosystem. Moving forward, we'll be looking at the different types of relationships. Now we have who we call the producers. The producers are majorly plants. They are majorly plants that they capture light energy and turn it into chemical energy stored in sugar. And as I said earlier, that grass, they gain their food via photosynthesis. So they are capturing energy from the sun. Then reaction is happening. They gain chemical energy and stored, which is stored in sugar. Now, another type of relationship is the consumers. Who are the consumers? Consumers are organisms that can make their own food, such as our eagle. The eagle here can't make his own food, but it's feeding on the rat, which is gaining his own food from the grass. The rat is also a consumer because it's feeding on the grass. So consumers are organisms that can make their own food. Another type of relationship is the carnivorous. When they say something is carnivorous, it simply means that animals that feed on meat. The main organisms that feed on animals. Examples are lion, tiger, wolf. Those kind of organisms, you can't see them feeding on vegetables. They feed majorly on meat. Even man too, we are carnivorous because we also feed on meat, but not fresh meat. Now, another type of relationship we'll be looking at is the herbivorous. When they say an organism is herbivorous, it means that they consume plants and they are also the producers. So a rat is an herbivorous animal, a rabbit is an herbivorous animal because of what they feed on grass. So those are examples of herbivorous. Now, another example, another type of relationship is we have the omnivorous animals. Now, for the omnivorous animals, they consume both plants and animals. The omnivorous animals, they consume both plants and animals, such as we. Man, we are omnivorous because we eat both plants, which are our vegetables, and we also feed on animals, which is our goats, our sheep, our chicken. So those are relationships in a particular habitat. And we'll also be looking at the decomposers. No, before the decomposer, we'll be looking at the scavengers. So when you say a particular organism is a scavenger, it means they feed on dead animals. And the most common one that we know that feed on dead animals are our vultures. Vultures, they feed on dead animals. Another one is the decomposers. The decomposers are consumers that eat and break down waste products. So all this your waste that are being thrown away, the actions that take place on them are happening because of these decomposers. They help in breaking down all this waste that are released in the environment, in our habitats. They help in breaking them down and they feed on it. So a most common example of decomposers are our fungus. The fungus helps us in decomposing our waste, and at the same time they are also feeding on it. So that's all for now on the relationship between living things and their habitats. In our next class, we'll be treating on that topic. Hope to hear from you soon. Be good.